Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me just fine. Thank you for coming to our second webinar on phiReport. We wanted to get back to you because we added some new features, or Pierre added some new features to the phiReport, so we thought we'd share that with you. We got some exciting things to talk about. So thank you again for attending. This is Mark Pick from PICK Cloud, and I will be your host today. It's nice being a host on this one, but just a few housekeeping items. I always encourage you to ask questions, and we have the chat. If you see the chat bar there, feel free to ask a question. I've already got a couple questions, so that's good, and we will answer those towards the end of the webinar. So fire away and let us know if you have any questions. So you guys know me. I'm Mark Pick, and I founded and am the cloud evangelistic officer over here at PICK Cloud, about coming up 6 years now. So everything's going pretty well. And of course, you guys know Pierre. He's the president of 3.5 Solutions, which has the phiReport. So just a little bit about us. You know, my vision in the company was to start a database as a service product. I felt that the cloud was the place to be, and I knew that the movement was going to be strong there when I started looking at this. So we were the first company to actually say, put PICK or MultiValue in the cloud, take all that infrastructure off-prem and put it somewhere where someone can manage it properly. So when I did do this, I looked at several hosting companies and decided to go with what I call the big three. There was Microsoft out there, Amazon, and of course Google. Google was kind of the third one that came into the mix, and found out that we had better performance and virtually zero latency. So that's where we are. We are 100% exclusive with Google, so it's working out pretty well. Anyway, what we do, you guys know what we do. I do not touch any hardware. We're not going to do that. So all of our stuff is maintained by our cloud partner, which is Google. They have a lot of amazing things in there, like self-healing, stuff like that. So we don't have to touch the hardware, which is pretty cool. And they are a global company, as you know. They're all over the world. So it works out well for us on being on all the different continents. So as I said in the beginning, when we started out, I really wanted to do database as a service, and I was able to partner up with Ladybridge, which is now owned by ZoomAssist, which has AccuTerm, which they bought AccuTerm too. So we have all three of those products are together now: QM, AccuTerm, and Google Cloud. And what that means is you get all of that. So you get your QM license, you get your AccuTerm license, and you get the Google Cloud infrastructure, all for $15 per seat. So what that means is if you have 10 users or 500 users, all of that's going to be supported for that $15 per user, and that's where we come up with this as a service. So that's database as a service. So let's see where you are, because I think this is, we'll kick this thing off with just a real quick question here, if you don't mind. I'm going to ask you a question about the terminal emulator that you use. So if you could just interact with me for 1 second here and tell me, what is your preferred terminal emulation? So some of you are voting. I'll keep it open for just a little bit, but it is sort of paramount to this topic that we are on today. So go ahead and tell me what your favorite terminal emulation is, and I will close the poll here in just a minute. Okay, you almost 100% have voted. For those of you that are still there, please just give me a vote. All right, I'll go ahead and close it down. I'm stuck on like 80% of you voting. So let's close the poll. Let me share the results with you. And it looks like, yes, AccuTerm comes out on top. with Wintegrate and Anzio a distant second. So I kind of expected that, since this webinar is this really helps users of AccuTerm, obviously. So we'll get into that in just a minute. So as you know, it's a perfect segue to this. You do need AccuTerm to run phiReport, and phiReport is actually built into the newer versions of AccuTerm, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, because there is a version that is shipped with AccuTerm. So, but today we're going to focus on, or Pierre's going to focus on some of the new features, the form builder, the custom templates, macros, and data blobs, and a few other things that have trickled in there. So one more question. I want to know what you guys use. What are you typically using Excel for? So let's take a look at that for a second. If you could just give me that vote there real quick. Because a lot of you, what we see, I see a lot of people pulling data out of their PICK environment, and a lot of people struggle with it and get frustrated with it, and they think that that's the reason why they need to move off of the PICK environment, because the reporting, they don't know anything about reporting, or they have a tough time pulling data out. And this is a way to be able to do that. So, oh, we got more people voting here, so let me show you what those results are. So reporting, perfect. Then this webinar is going to be perfect for you. So let's continue on here. And one last question, and then we'll be done with it. How many of you actually know how to create Excel macros? That's something that I'm curious to know about, or actually Pierre is curious to know about. If any of you users out there are sophisticated enough to do some pretty fancy macros when you're using Excel. So let's take a look at that. Thank you for voting. Wow, almost 100% on this one. So you guys are catching on here. So I'll close that poll, share the results, and it looks like 67% of you know how to use Excel macros, which is good. So good, okay. Well, that's great. So what I'm going to do now is hand it off to Pierre Trenefy, and he will we'll get right into the heart of the presentation today, and he'll show you some of these things that we talked about. So Pierre, are you ready to hop on here and do your thing?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. Thank you, Mark, for having me here today. And we're going to have about 40 minutes of exciting new features I'm going to show you. But before I start doing that, I see there's some interesting numbers here. 85% of you guys use AccuTerm, which means that the other 15% will have to upgrade to AccuTerm. I know somebody's going to be happy about that. 67% actually use or create Excel macro. That's very interesting numbers, because with this new 3.1 version of phiReport, you can create your own macros and inject them into your report, and we'll see that in a minute. But before we look at the new features, let's go through what phiReport is very quickly, and I hope that most of you have already seen it at least once. So phiReport is not just a data extraction, the kind of data extraction that we've been doing for years through any types of PICK databases. You know, we grab some MultiValue, try to normalize it, dump it into a CSV type file, and generate a long string of ASCII code that doesn't look like anything other than a long string of code. So what phiReport will give you is it's going to allow you to extract your data, normalize it, and then present it in a manner that is, you know, looks nice to a human person. So AccuTerm phiReport is an AccuTerm GUI application, which means that you need to have AccuTerm. It runs as an AccuTerm application, there is no installation, no deployment issues other than installing phiReport on your database server and having AccuTerm on your workstation. Starting with AccuTerm 7.3, Zoom Assist added this button right here to start the phiReport menu. The buttons also exist in AccuTerm 8, but before that, there was no button, so you would have to go to TCL and type commands like menu. So once the menu is up, you have these 4 options. And very quickly, we're going to go through the Data View Manager, which is the basis of phiReport. In order to create an Excel, so the first thing we do is we have to create views of our data files. In a PICK file, you have a bunch of dictionaries. In a traditional PICK file, you have too many dictionaries, thousands of dictionaries. 60, 70% of those, you don't even know what they do. So what we do before we generate any reports is we're going to clean up those dictionaries, and we're going to expose only the dictionaries that we want to use in our reports. And that is done through the Data View Manager. And you basically, you pick a file and, and you create a view. And creating a view is just adding dictionary items to your file. We do not create dictionary items into your file, but we create an alias file or a using dict type file, and we put all of our dictionaries in there. So in this Data View Manager, you can define the regular dictionary stuff. You have type, A, S, I, D, R, depending on your platform. On D3, for example, you would have A and S type. This is QM, so we have the I, D, and R for remote type. Everything else is very standard: conversion, correlative, data type, justification, etc. What we add in the Data View Manager is we have a sheet control section where you can actually control how the data is going to behave in Excel. We have things like we can build Excel formulas, and if I pick one of these guys here, for example, we have an Excel formula which defines the extended price 2 plus freight plus tax amount 2, and these would be equivalent or refer to other dictionary items. Then we have other options down here to make it. Do we want to delete the duplicate data? Do we want to show the data in the total line? Do we want to make this as a comment, etc.? And on the right-hand side, we have the visual control of this field or column. If we're going to use a merge header for this column, if we can set up, different fonts, different color for the header piece, and the same thing for the data piece. So once we've defined our data views, we can go to the builder and generate the report. Now, all this is pre 3.1. It's been around for since phiReport existed. So once we're in the builder, you can just select the report that you've built, or you can just select a view, and it will show you the list of fields that you've just defined in your data view. Excuse me. Okay. So at this point, you can select a few of these, 1, 2, or whatever, or all of them. And you can click on the preview button to see, well, we're missing some reference here, so I don't know which one it is. Just going to take them all. Run the preview, and it will show you a preview of what the data would look like when you run that statement. And you can go to the raw data tab to see what TCL statement it actually generated and ran. And you can actually run them from here. So it would just like it would run in TCL. So a simple report like this one, I'm going to use this one. Once you've defined your fields, you can define the display order. So we want to see this field first, class, UPC code, and you can see them over here. We can define the sorting rule. So if you want to sort by product description here, you just put a number, any number. So the lower number will sort first. So for example, you can do sort by product description and by UPC code, or if you want to do a by descending, you just put a negative number. So that would be by description and by descending UPC code. And if I run this statement, I can go to the preview data and you'll see that there's by description and by descending UPC. And once you're happy with the output, the preview output, you can click on the Excel button, and that will generate your Excel workbook. And you can see in the back here, in AccuTerm, that it's displaying some status information. So there's your report, very simple. It's sorted by the product description, and then by UPC code. You have a total line here, it's a sum, and a total line here. And the reason those exist is because you've said that you want a total on those columns. Okay. So that's about, you know, other than generating simple reports, tabular types reports, we can add security features to limit views or access to certain reports or fields for certain types of users. We can publish this report to end users. End users would typically use this query program where they can run the report, but they cannot modify it. So this would be the phiReport query for end users. They can pick a report, click preview, look at the data, and then they can click on the Excel button. And when they click on the Excel button, they have the option to show the Excel or just send it to a printer or to another printer. They can save it as a PDF, HTML, any of these supported formats down here. And if it's a save, if you do a save, you can also email it to somebody. The email will have the attachment, the saved file has an attachment. And if you save as PDF, you can select the preview PDF, which will open the PDF file when it's done. So this is typically for the end user. They can run the report, build, you know, PDF and email it, but they cannot modify anything on the report. If you need criteria, you can go in here and you say production description, and let's say it starts with or something like that. Starts with, and if you leave it blank, let's save that, and we go to the user view. They get this criteria up here, and then can do I, for example, and then run. Okay, so you can create reports in the builder. Try and on air, try different statements, different sort, total, etc. And when you're happy with that, you just save it, and it automatically gets published for your end users. So what's new in 3.1? What we've added in 3.1, and we're going to look at this report here. First thing we want to see is the report parameter tab. We have now the ability to name a sheet. We can give it, call it anything we want. We have what we call the row header text. Now, in a standard Excel report, you have the top and bottom, top header and bottom footer, which are the placeholders where you put like the date and page number, etc. But there's no mechanism to create a title, like a report title. And this is what this is used for. We reserve some space on top of the report. We make it a title, and we say repeat header, which means that if it's a multi-page report, that title will repeat on every page. The next thing is fit to. So if you have a wide report that doesn't fit on one page and you want to squeeze everything into one page, you can turn this thing on, and it's just like fit on one page wide or one page or n page tall. The alternate color, that's been around for a while. In the 3.0 version, the freeze pane was automatically added between column 1 and 2. It still is the default. But with 3.1, you can change it. You can say, I want this freeze pane on between column 3 and 4. Or you can turn it off. If you turn it off, you uncheck this, and there's no more freeze pane. The data filter in Excel are the little arrow drop-down list on the header. And what that does is it's going to give you a list of all the values or unique values of that column, and it allows you to select and sort, etc. So let's look at this one, see what that looks like in Excel. Okay, so here it is. So this top part is the row header, and we'll see that this string here, we use some pseudo markup language here to configure the look of the title. So we have FS for font size, then underline, bold, font color. We close those things. And then here we have what we call a system token, where we apply string replacement. A date means today's date. So we have a date here. So you see that this active, the string active, is red and underlined, and we can see that through the definition over here. It's underlined, it's bold, and it's red. And that's that word right there. Okay. A repeating header. So if I go to print preview, and this is the multi-page, you see that the header sticks on every page. Okay. Other things we see here is the standard Excel header and footer. See the printed on and page number at the bottom. And you also have a company logo, and we'll look at how that's done in a minute. Okay. Other thing, we have this is the global filters. This is this checkbox, the data filter. And automatically Excel will go and extract all the unique values for that column, and will allow you to sort and also filter. So you can say, I just want these guys. Okay. So that is all Excel's work, not phiReport. phiReport just tells Excel what to do, and Excel will do the rest for you. The fit to page, again, if you go back to print preview somewhere here, fit to page, you see that everything fits in one page. It's done over here, fit all columns on one page. So when we put this number here, all we're doing is we're telling Excel to turn on these options for us. Okay. It's also set to landscape, as you can see. Okay. The next thing here, as far as new features go, is the logo that we've seen on the page preview here. Okay. The way that's done is we go to the pre-printed or printed form parameters, and we apply a template. We have a standard demo logo template that's on our website, and it's part of the demo reports. All it is just a standard Excel report. You click on this button to edit or open it. There's nothing in the sheet. If I look at the view and look at page layout, that's where I see the logo. So what that means is you can create templates where you put your company logo, you put your fine print at the bottom, your stuff across the page, images or whatever. And all you have to do is you apply it to this report just like this. And when you run this report, it will use this as its template. You can apply this template to any reports you want. Okay. So very simple. Design your template in normal Excel. There's no need for any additional tools, and then just apply it to your report. Okay. That's it for this report. The next one we're going to look at is a little more complex report where we're going to do form printing. Form printing is like the old days pre-printed forms where you buy a box of pre-printed invoices or quotes or whatnot, and you write a program to print within the boxes of the template. Okay, and that's been around forever. But these days, most people don't do that anymore. They use some kind of tool to create those pre-printed forms. With phiReport, you can do the same thing. So let's just run this first, and then I'll show you how we do that. Let me close this. Another one here. Get rid of that. Okay, so here's the pre-printed report. What we see here is we have the header, then we have a bunch of line items, and then we have a footer. Okay. As far as pre-printed forms go, if we print this thing, it's not going to look like what we're expected to be. Whereas there's no footer, and this is what Excel does for you. I've got 8 pages here, and then every page looks the same. The header is the same. There's no footer. So that doesn't work for a pre-printed form. So what we've done through phiReport is we've added some smarts to Excel so that when you print this report, let me do a PDF here. When you print or generate a PDF, it will automatically add the footers. So creating phiReport form page, now printing. Okay, I'm going to save that on my drive here. Call it INV. Save. Okay, so if I look at the result in my R drive, so there's page 1. Now I've got 10 pages. Page 1 has the header, and it has a footer. It has some totals on the footer. Page 2, and so on. And on the last page, I have a different footer. In a lot of cases, when you have a multi-page invoice, the last page has the grand total of the entire invoice, and the intermediate pages have different data, maybe the page total, and then it has a word for continue on next page, or something like that. And we're able to do this through phiReport by defining different types of footers. So here again, intermediate pages from 1 to page 9, the intermediate footer, and then on the last page you have the final footer. So how did we come up with that? How do we do that? First of all, again, sheet name. We see the sheet name is invoice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've used this token. In this case, it's the user prompt. Remember, when I run this thing, it asked me for an invoice number, and that's because it detected in my criteria or somewhere that I want a token here. And since it's not a system token, it's going to prompt for it. User port is a system token. It's equivalent to user NO or PIB on some, depending on your database flavor. But it's basically a system token, so it will replace those strings for you automatically. If it doesn't know it, then it will prompt for it. What we see here that's new in 3.1 is the data setup. we are able to tell phiReport, or phiReport is able to tell Excel to start the import of data at a certain cell. So here's B21. If we look at our sheet here, we see that the first piece of data starts at B21. And we also say that in this particular case, we're going to create a data blob. The data blob is an item or more item that has all the data for you, versus running a T-cell statement, a select or list that grabs all the results from the select statement or from the list statement. We are actually reading data from an item. The item that we're reading from in this case is built or generated through this subroutine demo invoice query, and we pass it those same parameters that we prompted before. So if you look at that program very quickly, right here. So you see these T-cell statement, the sentence that's going to grab the parameter. We open our files, and then at the bottom here, we build our blob. So loop through the line items, build each line item. Because it's a blob, we can put anything we want. We don't have to follow the column rules that we would if we were doing a select or a list. So for example, if we look at this report here, you see that you have some columnar data, and then certainly you've got these block of stuff here that has nothing to do with the column. But that's okay, because we can do that through a blob. And the way we do that is just simply by putting a long string in one of those cells, and Excel will automatically bleed over to the next column. So that's up to the thank you thing here. And then at the bottom in our test program, if the invoice number is 12345, we add 200 lines of things down here. So that creates the blob. We save it in this item, in this file. And when we run the query, we are actually doing a select on the blob item or items if we have multiple. And then we use that as data source for our Excel report. The stuff just tells phiReport that this program is actually not returning any active list, because by default, when we run a pre-query process, we pass an active list to phiReport, and then the phiReport engine will do a select based on that active list. Since this is blob based, there's no active list return. Okay. And then the fun part is over here on the printed form parameters. Here we define our template. So let's take a look at that template. Right here. So there's three things on this template. There's three sheets. The first one is the base header, which defines the top part or the header part of our invoice. This piece gets repeated on every page. And all we have to do is we design it the way we want, and then we just give it a name, assign the base header name. We can name it anything you want. You can have as many sheets as you want. You just have to tell it which one is the right one. Then we have two footers. Footer 1 is the intermediate footer, and footer 2 is the final footer. And what we do here is we give it we provide the name for phiReport to know which one to grab, and we also provide how many rows in this sheet will make up this footer. So in this footer 2, we said 15. So these first top 15 rows will be used as final footer, and on the footer 1, we said 8. So the top 8 rows will be used as footer. And basically, that's all we need to do. Now, other things that we want to do in addition to displaying the footer and header is to put data in them. So for example, in the header, you see you have the bill to information, the ship to, some numbers, date, and so on. And if we look on the header, it's all blank, but what we have is what Excel calls shapes. And in Excel shapes, we can give them names. So this shape's called TXT bill to address. This one is ship to address, bill to number, store number, invoice date. Okay, and the way we pass data to these shapes is through our basic program up here, where we define a user data dynamic array. This user data array is defined by phiReport through a common variable. So you have to add that to your basic program. And all you have to do is provide a value pair of data. So value 1 is the name of the shape. Value 2 is the data that you're going to put in that shape. So build 2 is these things concatenated. The separator, SEP, here is just a line feed string to make it go to the next line. So all these value pairs are matched up with the shape names of the header and the footer. On the footer side, we don't have shapes, but we can name cells. You know that in Excel, a cell has a coordinate, like B13, C14, but you can also name them. So if you want to name this, ABC, you just type the name, press enter, and now this cell is called not C14, but ABC. And that's how we do this over here. We say this B2 is now called TXT case 1, and so each one of these have names. And the reason why we give them names is so that we can output the data. So due on 2, TXT due on 2, which is this guy over here, we're going to put some data in it, and we're just going to put some date. Okay. So you build your string, your list of value pair, shape names or cell name, and then the data that goes with it. So this is the dynamic data that's coming from a basic program. You can also put hard-coded data through the value pair table. So for example, this is TXT case 1, which would be this guy over here. So instead of outputting this data from our basic program, we're hard-coding some data from the report itself. Hard coding is not really true in this case because we're actually passing an Excel formula. So here we say equals this formula is the page total of the INV-NO column. Page total or doc total, this one is the total of the entire document of all the pages of EXT price column. And these columns are defined over here. And they will match up, hopefully, with these columns that you define in your template. Okay. So what that does on the Excel end is, first of all, these data is filled in, and if you go at the very bottom, you have these formulas that's generated at runtime through Excel. And there's the date. Like that. Okay. Another thing is, you notice that on the last page, you have a gap between the last row and the top of the last footer. That is because in this particular case, we want the footer, the last footer, to always be at the bottom of the page, so that they basically, fill up the whole page instead of having just a couple rows and then the footer and then a blank space at the bottom of the page. And that is done through this checkbox where you say pad to bottom. If you uncheck this, the last row or the top of the footer will be right below the last row. If you run it like this, when you look at Excel, you won't see a difference because Excel will put everything right below the last row regardless. It's when you print it that phiReport will know, oh, you do want or you don't want that last gap, so we'll add it for you. So if I do a print, and I'm going to PDF, okay. Here. Okay. going to call this IMD2. And if I go here, there it is. So everything looks the same except that the last page now doesn't have that gap. So that's why that checkbox is over here. Just add to the bottom or not. The multi-page macro template, that's basically this mechanism that automatically adds the footer on every page. And it will adapt to the page size. So if you use letter size A4 or whatever, it's dependent on your default printer. Okay. So that's pretty much it for as far as printed form goes. If you go to output and you say you want to save it as, let's say I want to save as like this. Let me close all these things. Close that. And because I do a save as, I can do a show output. I can also do a email. So if I do phiReport at outlook.com, okay. I don't want to show Excel. I want to see the output here, and I click run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. It's going to create a file called invoice form. It's going to send it to this guy over here. So it's going through the same process as before, except that it's not printing anything. It's just going to do a save as PDF. When you do a save as PDF, it's going through its paging smarts, where it's going to cut that long sheet into pieces and put all those footers, and it will email it to me. So there's the preview that we've asked for, and if I look at my email, there it is, invoice. And if I open that, there's my invoice through the email. Okay. I'll close that. Let's delete all this stuff here. Okay. The next thing we want to look at is this option down here, macro. So for that, I'm going to run this report here. Before we do that, we're just going to just take a quick look at this report, where we have this use PICK detail suppress summary style summary, and basically that's what this does is it's going to run your report with a detail suppress. If you run, if you run this, you see that it adds detail suppress, and so this is great for summary type reports. If you run this through Excel, you'll notice there's some totals over here: extended price, tax amount, freight, which corresponds to these things. Some. So the detail suppress removes all the details and just outputs, the total numbers and the grand total. Now, if you want to add some more excitement to this report, we could do something like this. So let's go back here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a macro. And I've got one prepared for you. And I just know it's called my pivot table. And if I run this, so it's going to run the exact same report, but it's going to do a little additional thing. So, first look at it like, well, what's the big deal? It looks exactly the same as the previous one. Well, if you look carefully, you'll see that there's an extra tab here. Click on that, there's your pivot table. Now, how is that done? Well, it's the macro. So let's look at this macro. The macro sheet is in XLSM, Excel file. There's nothing on the data itself. If I go Alt F11, oops, there you go. So in my module, I have, in this case, I have two functions, or one function and one sub. This is the subroutine that I'm calling through my report. And what it does is very simple stuff. You know, find the last row, select the range, add the, create a new sheet, do your thing, and you basically build the sheet with a pivot table. This code I actually didn't write. I just turn on the record macro, and then it just copy and paste it. Okay. In your macro sheet here, you can have as many macros as you want, and you just specify whichever one you want to run. So, for example, if I want to run this one instead, just change that name, click Excel, and then run. So this macro is a simpler macro. All it does is put this header. Here's the original one. Invoice list summary. I've replaced the header over here with this string, and I've made some font sizes and color changes. Okay. And if you want to run both of them, you can create a new subroutine. Let's call it sub do all or something. And what you can do is you just say run this and then run that. Like that. Let me close this. Close that. And save this macro. And here we just do, call it, yep, and then run. So for the 67% of people who answered yes on macros, you can really go crazy on this thing. I mean, it's wide open. You can do everything you want through macros. Here's the first one, and here's the other one. There's no limit to how much you can do by writing your own macro to, add sheets, and move things around, add data, download stuff from the internet or whatever. It's whatever you need to do, you can do it through macros. Okay. There's two types of macros. There's the Excel macro and VBA modules. Let's talk about security for a minute. If you look at my macro sheet here, you'll notice that, well, right now nothing, but if I show you this digital signature, you'll notice that this macro is signed by my own signature. And the reason for that is because Excel, depending on how you set it up, if you go options, trust center, macro settings. If you disable macros, nothing's going to work. But if you disable all macros except digitally signed macros, in order to run macros, those macros have to be digitally signed by somebody. The first time you run it, Windows will ask you, do you know this company or this person? And you say yes, it will install the certificate onto your machine, and then it will allow you to run any macros from that signature. If the macro is not signed, it's going to pop a dialog box that says you can't run this macro. The reason we're talking about security here is because when you, or if you use VBA as your macro source, and so you can store those macros in PICK. Let me grab this thing. You can actually run this, and what phiReport is going to do is going to read that item, and it's going to inject that macro into Excel. Now, Excel may not like it because of your security levels, and here it is. Programmatic access to Visual Basic project is not trusted. So what you have to do is you have to open that trust. So the report runs, but your macro doesn't run. You have to open the Trust Center and you have to enable everything. So which basically means you are opening up Excel to the world of viruses, but that will allow you to run that macro. It's not recommended, but if you are in a controlled environment, then I guess it is acceptable. But if you're not, you should really leave the default settings to assigned macros. Okay. Oh, still didn't like it. Maybe I didn't set it right. Okay. Close that. Okay, so the macro ran, as you can see, but without the security features turned on, the Excel security. Okay. So before I forget, I'm just going to turn it off or turn it on. Okay. The last thing we're going to look at very quickly is the demo that comes with phiReport. By the way, these are demos that actually do come with phiReport after you install it. There's another demo called Excel.demo that will be run from TCL. And what that does is it's going to run all those reports through the API call, and it's going to create all those reports into a single workbook. This is not a new feature, but I don't think people in 3.0 were really aware of it. And we've added a bunch of additional features to support the new enhancement of phiReport. So there's the report. So we have live product, the invoice, the long invoice. Then we have a short invoice, the detail report, and the ad hoc report. So all these things are different reports, but we run them into a single workbook, which we can save and then email to somebody. And the source of this is also available with the product. So the top part is the instructions on how this thing works. And then for each report, we define the report name. In this case, if you look at product list, that's the report. And we can also overwrite the default settings that we've defined in the report. So for example, here, you define this color, but I don't like that color. I want to put some other color. There's no row header text here, but I do want something in there. So I put the row header text. If we look at the output, you'll see that there's a row header text. So we can overwrite pretty much everything that you would do in phiReport to customize the report based on maybe who's running it, when you're running, the data that's in it, etc. And you would do this for every report, all the 5 reports. The interesting part on this one is the report number 5. Report number 5 says that it's running report name customers, but if you paid attention, you see that there's no customer report. And that's because we don't have a customer report, and this report is actually running a TCL statement. So if I grab this thing here, and I go to and close this thing so we get a session. So if I do a list, right, standard report, I can do a sort, another standard command. This is QM. But if I want Excel, I just do Excel sort, and what that basically does is this is what this does. It does the sort, but in Excel. So that's a standard Excel sheet. There are options that you can use. There's Excel list or Excel sorts, the same thing. Oops. So you could do something like this. If you put a header, I think you do my report. center. I don't. Oh no, it's heading. Heading center, and there's my report heading. Okay, but if I want this in Excel, I just put Excel and then run that, and it will put this my report heading on the header. The header is only visible through a print, and there's the header, my report. Other options that this Excel sort support is, you see you can do alternate color. So if you go back here and say A, and I want landscape, I want send to a PDF. And then cut sample PDF fine. Here, there's my PDF. Voila. So you could run in your basic programs, execute Excel sort, that sort command, and it generates the Excel sheet for you, or the PDF, without any programming. If you need to email it or add titles and stuff like that, then you would have to run the API. Through the API here, in the instructions, you can actually, add the email instructions. You can pretty much overwrite everything that's defined by your report. And last thing, if you're familiar with SP assign, there's a Excel assign, which does similar things, except that it's working against Windows printers that your workstation knows about. And I think that closes the demo, and that's pretty much it as far as 3.1 goes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, wow, that's a lot of stuff, Pierre. Good job. Let's bring it back here, and we got a lot of questions. So let's get to some of the questions. One of them, we had several questions on pricing. I haven't mentioned that yet, and I kind of saved it for the end of the presentation. We have, as you know, I'm all about software as a service, i.e. database as a service. So what we do with our clients and other clients is there's two different pricing out here. And what we've worked out with Pierre's company is we offer a cloud pricing. So depending on the size of your enterprise that you have out there, it's going to be $29, $59, or $89 per month. So that's all that you pay for it. And that's assuming that you're in our hosted cloud environment. Now, if you want to bring this thing on-prem, bring it in-house, do that and pay the annual maintenance on that, you can do that. We encourage that as well. Obviously, we would like to see you in the cloud. We've made the cloud pricing fairly inexpensive, so you can come in at a very affordable price there. So now, one of the things that we do offer is PICK Cloud has a cloud starter pack, so you can get phiReport with the Google infrastructure as well. So if you go to our website, you'll see that we have a special pricing, and in that includes the phiReport if you want to take advantage of that. We have a lot of people that see that and they go, you know what, I'll just take that. I'm going to save some money. So you can do that as well. So Pierre, we did have a couple questions. I will attempt to answer some of them as we move on here. But one of the things that before one last slide, and we're going to get to the questions, is what are the differences between the, say, on-prem version and cloud version, or the basic version that I mentioned that comes with AccuTerm. So right out of the box, AccuTerm will include what we call the basic version, and it has just enough in there to kind of tease you to get you familiar with it. And then when you want to graduate up, you can, depending on where you are, you can get the cloud version or the professional version. which we talked about there. So out of the box, you get the preview, create the Excel workbooks, and then the PDF. So, all right, to the questions. There's a few questions in here. We are currently, hang on, I gotta pop over my screen here. We're currently using PICK for all hosting and use Google G Suite. Is this product available on Google Sheets? I'll let Pierre, I'll let you answer that question. So Google Sheets versus Microsoft Excel.
That's a very good question that comes back all the time. phiReport does not support Google Sheet. Google Sheet is it's a Google thing, and the language that it uses is JavaScript, so it's very different from Excel. We have talked about creating a special version or a Google Sheet compatible version, but that's not, we don't have a date for that yet. So the answer is no, it does not. But in previous demos, we used to show, we have shown the capability of phiReport to generate REST services. And so Google Sheet can consume those REST services to extract data from your database.
Okay. Here's a question that I can answer is when I'm on my cloud version and I'm pulling data down to my desktop, is that data secure? And the answer to that is if you're a PICK Cloud customer, absolutely. We don't allow non-secure connections to any of our data servers. So typically it's an SSH connection, which is going to be a secure connection, and the data will be encrypted as it comes from the server to your desktop. So it will be secure, especially when you host with PICK Cloud. I'm a small company. What edition of phiReport Cloud edition would I need? Well, I would, depending on the user that you have, you could get away with the smaller version, which is $29 per month. Okay. Here's a good one. I'm currently running AccuTerm 2K2. Do I need to upgrade? The answer to that is yes. You do need to upgrade to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pierre, but you do need to upgrade to 7.3 and above. So, contact me privately, and I'll tell you how you can do that, but you do need to upgrade. Here's a good question, Pierre. We are currently running MVBase. Will phiReport work with MVBase? I don't recall seeing that. I would think that it would, but Pierre, because I don't know the answer.
No, phiReport runs on v3.1, University Data, and JBase. We do not have a MVBase port currently.
Okay. Well, let me ask the next question. Are there plans to run with MVBase, or is that it goes kind of one-off? Or
if it makes sense to the port, we can certainly do it, because all of phiReport is PICK basic programs. So
right.
MVBase is just like as good as any other PICK basic programs, and we don't use any third-party connectivity stuff. We just use AccuTerm. So there's no reason. It's not a big challenge to do the port. It has to make financial sense.
Right. Okay. Let's see. This came up kind of from two people. They asked it a different way. I'm not going to name any names on here. What's the learning curve to be able to use phiReport? I mean, do you have to be like a real power user? Do you got to know obviously, you got to know your data dictionaries and all that kind of stuff. I mean, your typical end user is not going to grab this thing and be productive. It's got to be some sort of person who's familiar with their data dictionaries, and that can be productive with this. Would you say that your users are a little more sophisticated and that are using this product? And I will answer, let me just take the first crack at this. I would say yes. What typically happens is end users like their standard reports, and between, Pierre has done a number of these for some of our clients where he'll create maybe a dozen or so reports they run 90% of the time. But then there's those power users that I think that can end up spinning this different ways. But Pierre, tell me, power users, regular users, what do you see?
Well, the person that's going to create those data views will definitely be power user, somebody that's intimately close to the database, the dictionary structures, the file names, and all that stuff. Once the views are created, you can pass that to a less power user. So somebody who knows that customer number is customer number and customer ID is customer ID. They don't need to know what file it comes from, what attribute, the conversion, any of that stuff. The user that generates those reports, it's the same thing as if you were running, the old MS query, I forgot what it's called now these days on Microsoft, where you select some fields and build your statement. And then you have the end user, which will use the phiReport query, which all they do is select the report, answer a few prompts, and click run. So there's two types of users: really, the guy that really knows the PICK stuff, the guy that knows what the field is, and the guy that knows that he needs a report. Right.
Okay. A couple more, and I know we've kind of gone over here, so I'll go real quickly. Is there a particular version of Microsoft Excel that this is compatible with?
No, we go all the way back to 2000. I think it's 2003. It's not recommended because 2003 doesn't have the PDF export capability. You would have to install an add-on. So we recommend 2010 or better, which is pretty common out there. I think 2013 is a common one.
Right. Okay. I just put the pricing slide up on the screen there for people because I did get a couple more questions on that. And then one last question, and we'll let everybody go. It's the now that AccuTerm 8 is out, does that affect phiReport? If I'm using phiReport today, now I go to 8, do I have to rebuy phiReport? Is everything going to work, or what happens with AccuTerm 8 now that that's just hitting the street?
Nothing happens. What happens is the stuff that you don't see that I have to deal with. But as far as you're concerned, AccuTerm 7, AccuTerm 8, same price, no upgrade fees. You won't see the difference. It will work exactly the same.
Okay, great. All right, well, good. Hey, Pierre, thanks for taking time today to meet with everybody. We love seeing products like this because it's all about what we like to do, which is preserve and rejuvenate multi-value systems. And this is a product that definitely does that. So we appreciate that. And I'll just answer one last question. Yes, the demonstration today was done. Pierre is in his office. I'm in my office. His desktop was running at his home, and he was connected to one of our PICK Cloud servers. Where that server was located, probably physically, it was located in Oregon. I think he's connected to one of our West Coast servers. So, Pierre, thanks you for your time. Thanks for everybody that was on the call today. And if I didn't get to your questions, I will answer them privately. But feel free to come back to our website to get more information on phiReport. This will be available in the next couple days to be on our website. So I thank everybody for attending, and I look forward to seeing you on our next webinar Wednesday that we'll probably do real soon. So thanks everybody for joining us, and you guys all have a great day. Thanks again, Pierre. Bye-bye.